think Fujimoto is playing a very interesting game. We have two major players here, Denji and Asa, and we have one major scenario. Death is orchestrating this major scenario with the likes of Fall and Fami and fake chainsawman. We're splitting our two major players. One side has Denji and this new being that I will talk about, and the other, perhaps Asa and the Falling Devil. The goal of this scenario is still not concrete to us. Theoretically, we can kind of estimate that the purpose of this is to cause all-out warfare, so Denji can kind of do his thing. People can call out for help, Pochita comes to save the day, somehow Asa and War are caught in this because they are the terror that encompasses this human-level extinction event, and we stop Death's awakening. That would be the simplified version. There's a lot more of a conversation that goes into it, but until we get a better picture, a better understanding, a better description from Fujimoto, we're still playing in the shallow end of this pool. And when I say that there is more to this conversation, this chapter and what happens within it is kind of the best example. Let me explain. The first situation is Asa versus the Falling Devil, and I'm very excited for this. Not only is falling a primal fear, something that is inherently incredibly powerful, but she also has a bit of a temper. She gets a little bit upset, a little bit angry, a little bit iffy when it comes to the disrespect towards her food. I love the cooking and chef motif. So when I think of a fight between her and Asa and War, I see a lot of personality at play. Both of these characters are kind of oddly similar to each other. Yoru is a spoilt brat, very egotistical, and I think that could match really nicely with what the opposite of Falling Devil is. On one side, upholds her personality. She's very bland and concrete, but when she crumbles, she breaks under the pressure, goes out of control and belligerent. Now, when I try and think of their fight, what a battle would look like, I'm not entirely sure. Falling is incredibly powerful, but we haven't seen the utilization of her abilities within a fighting format. We've seen it passively, but within a 1v1 scenario, not really. If she can slam people up into the air and throw them back down based on the weight of their emotions or their mindset, if you're able to circumnavigate that, is she really that powerful? I don't think we should underestimate her though. They are a primal fear for a reason, and they hold a lot of potent potential and power. However, Asa and Yoru are very strong and they're rapidly growing. Because she now has acquired tank and gun, there is a lot more possibilities here. It is believable that she could go toe-to-toe with a primal fear. Maybe not all of them, but some. For me, funnily, it's not actually the power that I'm worried about when it comes to Yoru, it's her personality. While I think she is confident within her own respect, she's kind of overly confident, sometimes a little bit greedy, and this leads to mistakes, leads to problems. Now, there's never really a technicality for fights. There's no like proper power scaling to utilize, so you kind of just have to go by the general vibe. Pretty much all of Fujimoto's stories work in a similar way. Power scaling is not a metric that's normally used. Chainsaw Man is his kind of first work that utilizes a power system where you can kind of scale it. Emphasis on kinda. It's not important, it's not really valuable, it barely even functions or works, but you can kind of align things certain ways and be like, okay, makes sense that primal fears sit here and then horsemen's and then, certain hybrids, but then you have Pochita over here, etc. Right? So it kind of structures itself. Don't put too much stock into that. This chapter kind of shows you exactly why you shouldn't. Naturally, you would think a fake Chainsaw Man versus the real Chainsaw Man would be a pretty decent battle, something of a tug of war even, but it's not. It's instant. Gone, over, within a blink of an eye. Denji doesn't even struggle with this. It takes like 2 hits and he's gone out of the picture entirely. The reason is that it applies an ulterior purpose. So you apply that to Falling and Yoru, and most likely we're going to get something very interesting from it. And innocent people are going to get caught in the crossfire. And the more innocent people get scared, the more they see this annihilation and extinction level event coming, the more heightened of fear that's going to be produced and Death's awakening rapidly approaching. This leads us to the huge bombshell. One that I think we should have seen coming, but because it was hidden so well, genuinely not even played upon, it kind of just happens. The Fire Devil is here. What's so important about this fire devil? Why are we even hyping them up to be something? They're not a primal fear, technically. They're just a very powerful devil. There's a couple of different reasons. First, it is a meta conversation. If you have read Fire Punch, the idea of a fire devil and connecting the worlds together would kind of work really nicely. Having Agni or someone in relation to Fire Punch be the fire devil or have a similar design motif would be really cool. So a lot of us were excited to see what that representation would be. I don't think anyone outright expected Agni, but something similar. And to be fair, the design of the fire devil, you can see it a little bit, not in body or shape, but mostly just the facial structure with the flames. That could just be the easiest way for Fujimoto to draw the character, maybe something he's used to, but it could be a nice little reference. Not the biggest reference or the easiest to notice, but maybe we're just splitting hairs at that point. The second biggest thing is their role within this story. Did you know that the Fire Devil has been in the story since chapter 1 of part 2, by the way? The Fire Devil has been pulling a lot of the strings since the very beginning, and the first kind of inkling we get of that is when the whole chainsawman church stuff comes into this story, that the Justice Devil was giving out contracts to school students, but then they were turning into these like chainsawman hybrids. That actually wasn't Justice Devil. That was the Fire Devil mimicking the Justice Devil and handing out a Fire Devil quote-unquote contract. So it was both utilizing and piggybacking the want to be justice, provide that sense of justice to public, i.e. fake chainsawmen, and manipulating the school students to be a part of that through Fire Devil contracts. So they have had a hand in this for a while. They have been working with Death for a while, and both of them have been hiding in plain sight under the guise of other people. Death was technically pretending to be Fami, and then Fire was within the hearts of the beings of Justice Devil and others. This is a really cool reveal because now you don't know what's going to happen, but it should, hypothetically, usher in a much clearer picture for not only the intent of Death, an explanation given on why Fire is actually doing certain things, but also something odd, something that is more personal perhaps, or even just different. See, Fire doesn't want to fight. She, in her words, merely has a question. Does he remember his face? And you get this panel of all three of them. Fire Devil in the back, Denji in the middle, and then this silhouetted head that you're seeing the back of looking at Denji. I can only assume that this is the main being or human that was fake Chainsaw Man. Question is, who is it? Why are they here? What importance does it play? Is it some big grand character reveal that we're going to pull from part 1 of the story, or is it just someone that's been in part 2 since the beginning? Someone that doesn't really have much of a significance for a reveal of this caliber, but could still be rather interesting, like Seiji from the school, for example, which would be your first kind of decent guess. Maybe Miri Shugo or someone else. Here's the thing, I have a couple of different things for this, but firstly I have to make things clear. The Fire Devil not wanting to fight is rather interesting. I would think naturally the quickest way to spread fear is to push your fire out and kind of encompass the world into this all-out terror, which makes me think that Death is playing it in a more sophisticated manner, not wanting to have utter destruction and annihilation on her hand, but rather keep it precise and clean while still trying to maximize the fear level. She is trying to provoke Pochita to come out to play, but she needs that arrival of Pochita to match with the heightened level of human fear. So when Death awakens, Pochita also awakens and they can fight each other. This would be the easiest way to stop humanity from basically obliterating itself, and Death can be hopefully reset to come back to normal. This is an unavoidable thing. Death is trying to control it. So Fire not really doing anything and rather getting under Denji's skin might be the primer for Pochita to come out to play. I don't expect him to awaken instantly here unless this face that he's meant to remember is more traumatizing than we think, which leads you to one specific answer. One answer that could unravel this whole thing, and I don't know why Fire Devil would be in that person. I don't know how they would come in contact with that person, but maybe she just has the ability to morph a character out of nothing. We've seen it happen with fake Chainsaw Man. People can change their appearance. Perhaps is an easy possibility. This could be, and stick with me, delusional copium right here, this could be Denji's father. Out of all the characters in this story, the ones to get under Denji's skin, the one to provoke this idea of Pochita and just chaos itself, his father would be a very problematic thing. Now, your first natural response is, that's kind of crazy, over the top, way exaggerated. That is true, but it would be kind of cool. The one thing that Denji hasn't realistically faced head on, and the only person we have never seen, is Denji's family, his mother and his father. The one time that we seen his father, his face was turned away from us in a flashback that was incredibly traumatizing for Denji as a child. Since then, he's never willingly faced that trauma. You can't necessarily blame him for that. He's tried his best to heal from it as much as possible. Now you have a devil that might be able to bring out his worst nightmares, might be able to get so deep under his skin that the things that Denji has tried to erase himself, his trauma, his past, what his parents look like, now come back out to haunt him. If by any means this is the way that Fujimoto wants to go, he has a lot of potential to work with. A final dive and exploration into Denji's trauma, one of the things that he's never been able to heal. What his father done to him, how much he's erased from that memory, what perhaps his mother meant to him. All of the things that Denji encompasses right now is healed around a very abyssal wound that has not been healed properly. And just maybe, it might sound crazy, it is time to explore that. The final curveball I can give for this is, if it's not Seiji or a school student, someone that he met at the beginning of the story, if it's not his father, maybe, and this could be genuinely crazy, it's Denji himself, his face. And that conversation on its own leads to so many possibilities. The play into identity, the back and forth duality between Denji as a human and Denji as chainsawman, and then obviously Pochita, the isolation of his identity mixed with his trauma and how it swirls everything together. It's just a very odd, difficult experience that the Fire Devil could play into its complexity, with Denji feeling so torn between different lifestyles that he's been living. The balance between human and hybrid. That face could be his own, and it could be a very, very rude awakening.